My first degree was in architecture, and my master's degree was also in architecture with strong footings in urban design and housing. But over the years, I, with some efforts or effortlessly, kind of tried to transgress the disciplinary boundaries and found myself in the intersections of built environment design and education, psychology, and public health. So I should then just can tell myself perhaps an interdisciplinary researcher, or I can talk about like convergence research that I have taken away this morning. So what I'm interested in co-design, co-building, and co-evaluation of children's environments. And so having said this, so my research is strongly influenced by practice and by thinking community as the co-architects in designing spaces. So as I was saying, I work with children, and that the children have the right to express their opinion on matters that affect them and be listened to and taken seriously. And it is mandated by the international law that UK has ratified too, although the UNCRC bill is passed in Scotland, although they could not make it law. However, Scottish government has made a commitment to actually to involve children and young people in decision-making process to the maximum extent. But in Wales, we are, in a sense, quite fortunate to have the policy infrastructure that, to some extent, requires all the public bodies to actually take into account voices of people of all ages and diversity in decision-making about places. And this is supported by the national participation standards for children and young peoples that puts it as a requirement to local authorities. However, perhaps this is up for discussion how much built environment professionals, so architects and urban designers, are implementing this in practice. Whenever this is happening, so too often, consultation with younger citizens happen in a tokenistic manner, which can be regarded as kind of non-participation or borderline participation as per Roger Hart's ladder of participation or Einstein's kind of passive participation. And often architects and urban designers are perhaps provided with a list of objects that they need to design or incorporate in their design, and may not be directly involved in making meaning of the data or information that is gathered in the context of participatory design or planning, or in the context of consultation with younger people. However, it is important that the children engage in the participatory activities as co-architects or co-designers, rather than just providers or suppliers of information. Now, participatory design, while we say it's not only offers children and young people to give voice on matters that affect them, whose voices is underrepresented in design and planning industry, it can be a valuable learning experience for architects and designers as well. So in a research project led by Sheffield University, where architects and urban designers were interviewed, who engaged children and young people in their design process, mentioned the experience to be truly rewarding, that has challenged their thoughts and shaped their practices. Just talking about the benefits to the children and young people, in my research, both in my Master of Architecture and my PhD research, children and young people co-designed and co-built their outdoor learning environments with us, architects, landscape architects, the teachers, and the community, and that had a profound impact on their motivation and their academic attainment. So, and following in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic, and following the pandemic where we were all aiming to build back better, and in alignment with Cardiff Council's greener, fairer recovery strategy, we worked with the local authority and the local community, so Grangetown and Inner Cardiff community, to co-create a children and young people's recovery plan for their neighborhood. So we worked with more than 150 children of 8 to 17 years old who participated in a series of workshops, drop-in sessions, and urban room activities where they shared with us what they value in their community, what may be working well or what may not be working well, and what could be improved, or what new things could be introduced to their neighborhood to make Grangetown playful, safe and clean, green and inclusive. So for many children, this was the first time they were asked about their everyday places. Some shared that these activities gave them an opportunity to look into their everyday places with different eyes, which they had taken for granted otherwise. And children and young people also felt positive and hopeful about making changes. So what they felt is, being alone and individual, they felt like they could not change what is happening to them, so they felt powerless. But in the context of these participatory activities, where they could, in a collective environment, share their experiences and preferences, they felt hopeful about making changes in their own community together. So while the benefits of co-designing with kids for both children and professionals are documented in research, perhaps less for professionals, and we kind of have more documentations for children and young people. Johnny Babucci's opinion piece asks this important question of then as to why architects and urban designers are lagging behind in this area. So why, as professionals, we are not listening to them enough? So this is a question perhaps I would like to ask the audience today as well, because in my kind of research of literature on the kind of barriers and challenges in listening to voices, not many things have come up. But what we can understand from the kind of conversations with our architects colleagues and friends and urban designers, that there are the things that come up is actually time and resource constraints. And we also kind of need to, in this context, reflect on to whether architecture and design education is preparing individuals to be confident and comfortable to go out there, to ethically engage children and young people in the process of design and make meaning of data captured in the context and interpret that and transform that into physical forms. So it is a challenge for architects in many ways to let go of the preconceived notions that Michael has been reflecting on this morning and in his book, and step aside from the egotist role of the sole designer, creating the kind of aesthetically astounding visual forms, and to see to work with the community or children and young people as the co-designers. So how architects and designers, it in many ways kind of work with that kind of knowledge of that and knowledge of how. But what John Shorter argues that architecture and designers need knowledge from within. In addition to knowing the kind of theoretical principles and technical skills, this knowledge stems from the socio-cultural surroundings in which it is situated. So what I want to argue here that architecture, and quoting from Jensen's book, architecture education has responsibilities in educating individuals who would cultivate their design sensibilities through focusing on the needs of the surrounding communities, and in many cases transgressing the disciplinary boundaries. And this is, I quite like from Michael's book, as this cross-multi or interdisciplinary attitude that is the most potent agency in embracing and stimulating disciplinary knowledge, because it can serve to reformulate the boundaries and traditions it first transgressed, creating a fertile ground for cultivating innovative theory and practice. So in this context, it is important that this is explored through the lens of people of different age, gender, and ethnicity, and that it happens it can be reframed and situated within critical place-based pedagogies. And that the curricula expose students to the diversity within their surrounding community and equip them with the skills to engage with the communities at different scale. In this context, we applied and tested a critical and place-based pedagogical approach in a week-long summer school, Cities and Children, that aimed to equip students with the theoretical knowledge and practical methods and tools to work with children and young people to co-create places which reflects the needs of local children. A diverse range of actors are involved in design and planning process, and what we explored how that can be reflected in a classroom setting. Just to give a brief of the demography of the students who participated. So it was a multidisciplinary cohort coming from architecture, urban design, human geography, and there are students from undergraduate, postgraduate, taught, and also PhD students. So over the period of 1 week, spread across May and June, students engaged in lectures, interactive sessions, group discussions, neighborhood walks, and practical sessions with children. So our students, summer school students and children appraised their current neighborhood, shared what they valued, they walked and talked about their favorite places and places that needed change. They suggested ideas for improvement through mapping, drawing, post-iting, model making. And on the last day of the summer school, they also presented, so students and kid architects presented their design ideas together to the stakeholders and discussed about what next. So we have shared our ideas and what is going to happen next and how it is going to be reflected in the design and planning. Okay. Our students have reflected on their experiences through reflective logbook and also a pre and post summer school survey. And what is interesting is that participation in this summer school challenged their preconceived notions and changed their perspectives regarding children's perceptions of space and enabled them to have a deeper understanding of the community and children's spaces. So one student reflected on their preconceived notions and how they let go of those and found and thought it is important to listen to the children's ideas, recognizing their wisdom and creativity. this was a unique experience for both the students and children, where students felt connected with the children. And they found it is a very different experience than working with them in a school setting. And that the children's ideas were creative and were situated in the context. Students particularly valued the transformative journey they had been through that combined theoretical and practical aspects and allowed for personal growth and development. This aligns well with what architects in the Sheffield study have mentioned about how working with children questioned their preconceived notions of their practice. It also made students more compassionate to the community, strengthened their belief in co-design, while provided them with the practical and creative research tools to engage children in the process. And what children thought that it should be integrated across curricula. So why it is not happening, why it is a kind of a summer module, rather than why they are not learning through this process in their compulsory modules. And what we think is that this kind of resonates with what Michael is mentioning about the transformative potential for studio culture to be transformative curriculums where the studio is the integrative or the connective tissue in the educational experiences, and have great potential for transforming the university far beyond the design disciplines. And I think that is it. Thank you.